Today, we have an absolute Jedi Knight when it comes to how you think and how you use your brain as a tool. So today on the podcast, we're looking at how someone who is a leader or a director or a manager or someone who just cares about getting promoted down the track can keep themselves healthy, keep their head in the game, because a lot of the time in business or in our workplaces, we pace ourselves for the next week or the next month, but David specializes in helping themselves pace themselves for the next 5 years. So David, what are the key things we need to keep in mind if we're going to stay in the game for the next 5 years?
One of the most important things that I'd say, Michael, and by the way, thank you for having me on your podcast. You will enjoy this. You said I was a Jedi before. The answer to your question, it's simple. A lot of people make the mistake of getting overly engaged at work and under engaged at home. And that leads to a work-life imbalance, which is the fast path to burnout. And worse than that, it's also burning your kids out as well and your spouse, because at the end of the day, if you're not fully engaged, just the way that you are at work, then you're losing the most valuable assets that you have. So not only is it hurting your health, it's hurting your family.
Wow, I've just learnt something there too. I've never considered the effect that burnout has on your family. Okay, so obviously no one listening to this wants to burn out, but you're saying, hey, if you do burn out, it's not just you at stake, it's others. So most people I know who experience burnout, particularly executives, they're out of the game, or at least they're rubbish at their work for a year and a half. What's the impact on a family when someone burns out? What's the impact on a family when someone's having a really hard time at work that doesn't look like it's going to be solved anytime soon?
Well, there's a disconnect that happens in the family as a result of burnout. And what I have found with people who are burning out is that they come home and they use it as a place to collapse. And what I mean by that is that they hit the TV, they hit the couch, and they barely move from there because they're trying desperately to cope or to process what's happened at work. And that's where I said earlier that it has a disconnect with the whole family because, here you have little Timmy or little Jenna who's tugging on your shirt. Daddy, can you look at this? Can you help me with my math? Can you look, I did something really big for my school project. Please come have a look. And so that's the danger of burning out, is that it doesn't just hurt you, as I said before, it hurts your whole family and your spouse, because now you're, at the end of the day, if she's anything like my wife, she spent the whole day, she wants to have some adult conversation and debrief and de-stress from the day, and you're physically there, but you're not there.
That's remarkable. So the idea that, I dealt with my job, I got to the end of the day, I've actually got my second job now, which is just as consuming and just as important as my first one. So I guess you're saying the stakes are extra high if we burn out. So when I talk to executives, when I talk to even people in their 20s who are starting to climb the ladder or just care about their job, right? I'm hearing people talk about being overwhelmed. And what they're saying a lot of the time is there are this many tasks to do and this much time to do it. Now, there's a couple of things at play there. One is a lack of prioritization. Any executive who's not in control of their own calendar is not an executive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's not an executive. That's why I'm pretending to be an executive. Or any business owner who says, I've got this much to do, but only this much time. Well, that is a lack of prioritization. And obviously we're simplifying things because, workloads go up and down like a yo-yo sometimes. But what are the key things that someone can do to not burn out? What are the things that we can do today so that in 6 months' time, we've got nothing left in us?
That is delegation. A lot of people think that they have to micromanage everything, that they have to control everything with an iron fist. What they don't understand is, just like at home, you need to find tasks that the people underneath you are capable of doing, and then all that you're doing is supervising that the tasks get done correctly. And what you're simultaneously doing is you're building the capacity of your staff to go from here to here. A lot of people don't seem to understand that a genuine manager is responsible for equipping the next generation and building their capacity to the highest that it can go.
Okay, that makes sense. So for a lot of executives that I work with or that I personally coach, they don't have a lot of people they can delegate specific things to. For example, if they're the ones signing off on XYZ, they actually have to look over it. And what I see a lot of the time is the tasks keep expanding. And I see what you're saying of, I see this a lot in the real world, that people won't delegate because last time they delegated to XYZ person, it took that person 10 hours to get it wrong and they had to redo the work, and they lose faith in people they work for. I see that. But then I also see a lot of things like, say, you'd be crazy to delegate your marketing completely. You know, if you're the business owner and you built this from day one, you know what customers respond to, you know what they don't respond to. You can't just outsource every aspect of that. So how does someone walk that balance between passing off as much as they can and accepting that there's some things they need to do, particularly if they're in a growing business? Because every time you grow, the workload just grows and you haven't yet got the new staff to delegate to. Like, what do you see working for people in that spot?
Based on my experience running a large telco, I was responsible for running telecom, one of the largest telcos in Australia. I was responsible for SAWA, Northern Territory, and Tasmania. Just because you start with people doesn't automatically mean that you're going to finish with people. Sometimes you start off with people who are great for a startup, and then you reach the capacity of a small, medium enterprise, and they're no longer suited. Answering the question more directly, a lot of people make the mistake of delegating and then not checking up. So the reason that the project failed is that you gave someone carte blanche to say, go off and do this. I don't have time to do this. And that's when the wheels fall off the car and the refrigerator breaks down, because you didn't monitor their progress.
Okay, so in technical world, that's called abdicating. So you haven't delegated the task, you've abdicated.
You've abdicated it, correct.
You know, like the king who just steps away from the throne. So that's the skill set. And I think what you're saying is so valuable. I would estimate that 50% of the people that I see at work have no idea how to delegate without either abdicating or micromanaging. So that's remarkable you say that. What I do with my team is I'll delegate a task, but I'll be really clear about what the task is, what the goals are. I'll give them a 5-minute video on what we're looking for so that it can't be forgotten. And then I'll create check-in points. You break the project in, say, 6 points, create check-in points. And it means everybody wins because they've got the clarity they need, but then they're not going to get lost in the wilderness. What are some ways that you see other people doing to protect their staff from completely going off the track, but without consuming themselves with a whole heap of time?
You didn't wake up in the morning one day and all of a sudden you knew how to run a large NDIS organization. Anything takes time and it takes practice.
Okay. It's all about finding the right people as well, because we're oblivious to our own areas. And most people I see who burn out, everyone around them could see they were going to burn out, but they didn't have someone to go, hey, you need to step back a bit. What are you doing? What would your advice be to someone who is watching one of their colleagues or their manager or one of their staff starting to burn out and everyone's ignoring the danger signs? I mean, how do you call that out in a way that's helpful and people are going to be open to, David?
You have to have a relationship with the person to be able to criticize in any way. And don't make any mistake about it. The person that you're approaching and saying, hey, I'm really worried about you, you're on the edge. That can potentially, without enough of a relationship, that can potentially alienate them and drive them away. What are you talking about? I'm fine. I don't have any problems. So first of all, it takes a relationship. And secondly, it takes a risk. It takes the willingness to take a risk to say, I'm genuinely concerned about you and I don't think I can help you, but I would like to recommend that you talk to XYZ, who I believe can help you and is more than qualified to do so.
And that takes courage. How many times have you found yourself having that sort of conversation with someone?
Too many. But at the end of the day, either you genuinely care about the person and you want to see them succeed and not fail, or you don't. And so sometimes you have to be willing to burn the bridge in the hopes that they are going to choose to not burn the bridge so that they can succeed.
I'm hearing you say, so that if it comes to it, to have the courage to be willing to say what's hard, it may work out beautifully. You may be a massive help to someone, or it may not. But that courage is important. And then I guess, David, what would be something that you'd say to someone if you feel like you're listening to this now and you feel like you have been burning the candle at both ends and it's been for more than just a short-term thing? Okay, 1 or 2 months at work, that's crazy. We all get that. But 1 or 2 years, we've got a different issue. Okay, what are some of the things that someone who's listening to this who's like, I'm on the edge of burnout? Well, what are some things that they could be taking into account now or thinking through?
You may not realize that some of the staff underneath you have skills that you haven't yet identified. delegate, and as we said before, not abdicate some responsibility, even if it's just a little bit here and a little bit there. It might be, I don't know, there's too many examples to go into, but have a look around you and just have a quick assessment of what you actually have.
Yeah. What else were you thinking?
I was thinking that a lot of people make the mistake of adding on to their itinerary. So for everything that you add, you actually need to take something off, because otherwise, and I've been guilty of this, and I've gotten to know you a little bit in the short time that we've been talking, that you're exactly the same. We've all been guilty of having 40, 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. And as you said before, for a week or two, that's okay, and we can manage that. But the problem is that the more you put on your plate, the harder your life gets. And that's where you're on the fast track to burnout. Sometimes what we need to do is to say, okay, let's prioritize this, just as you would in project management. What's the most important thing? What's the least important thing? And if there isn't anyone you find to do the least important thing, drop it and maintain no more than 50 hours a week. And the reason that I say 50 is that I don't know anyone who's not capable of that extra 10 hours to train staff. That's the most important thing.
Okay, got it. So you're saying, what you're saying makes sense. You're saying keep growing and be willing to put in extra hours, but put those hours not into putting out fires, but into getting your staff up to speed.
Difference between reactive, where you're putting out fires, and proactive, where you're actually preventing the fires from happening.
David, love your work. So when I look at what you do, I think it's very much needed. And I think that anyone who is a leader of others, it's very easy to be like, oh, I'm fine. As long as my team are okay, I'm happy. But we are burning ourselves out when our families are like, oh, you're here, but you're not here. Or our kids are like, Dad, how come we're not playing ball anymore? You know, we're burning ourselves out when we're going to bed later and later or getting up earlier. And it's this gradual creep. It's like, David, if someone wants to know more about what you do, what's your website?
wolverton.net.au.
Love your work, David. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I appreciate that a lot of people will have got a lot out of this. Thank you so much.